All right. So as I said, I want to start the recording today by first looking at the new students that have joined us since last week. We started with 25. We got four. Okay, seeing a message here. Her net is down. She doesn't have it to the internet, so she's using her data just in case. All right, Harry. Thank you. All right, can understand that circumstance. All right, yeah. So we do have some new students. So what I want to do is to assign them to the chapter presentations and record it so that they would know when they look at the video um, for today's session, they'll be able to see where they've been assigned. Um, for those new persons who are joining today or who are here, um, this is in relation to the first assessment piece where the various chapters from the two textbooks that we assigned readings, you would be required with your group to basically teach the chapter to the class. So I wanted to kind of work on that. Let me share my screen and show you the new lineup of folks. We have a couple new people. So the intention would be to add those persons. So with 29 people, we will end up with one group of two and 9 groups of 3 apiece. So the new persons, as they have arrived, I will assign them to from 5 going up. So that way people would know what which class or which grouping or chapter they've been assigned to. I'm hoping you guys can see this stuff here. So the first new person, I'm starting from the bottom of the list here, that who came in. Oops, let's see who that is.
The excuse.
Yes.
Can I request something?
Hold a sec. Let me just take a note of who just came in there. I think that was Kimberly. Hi, Kimberly, that was you? Rajkumar? All right.
Yes, sir. Good evening.
Good evening. Miss Regis, I see your hand up. Who
Yes,
wanted to ask a
sir.
question? No.
I just had a quick
All right.
question.
All right. So before you, somebody had asked us to ask a question. Who was that?
Ethan, sir.
Ethan, go ahead. What's the question?
Can I request that my group gets one of the people?
What group is that?
Group presentation 2. Because my topic is really big, sir.
Presentation 2?
Yeah.
Yeah, you will get one of the people. The
But it
only
has enough to reach up all the way to
Yeah,
me?
we have 4 new people, so there are 4 groups that will get one person apiece.
Alright, no problem.
The
Thank you.
My problem with assigning people late is, first off, they're not here yet. So
Yeah.
yeah, kind of ensuring that they are,
Alright, no problem, sir.
so that their challenges. Yes, and you're right, Ethan. Actually, no, Ethan, your chapter is not that big,
So
That
no, it's
that
one of the biggest. No, true.
no, I'm telling
I
you, I have taught this course for years. There are lots of other chapters here that are bigger than that.
really.
Yeah, the first 2 chapters are probably the shortest.
No, sir. No, because
That should tell you
I
the
was looking
density.
at it.
That should tell you the density of the other work. Anyway, Miss Regis
Alright,
has
sir,
a
okay.
question she wants to ask. Right.
Yes,
Trust me.
sir.
Mm-hmm.
The third person that is in the group with me and Ari.
You and
Sh
Ari.
yeah, Michaela, presentation 7.
She hasn't turned up in class yet. That's Miss
No,
Mohammed.
but
Mm.
I did message her.
Oh, she
Uh,
she is in the group. She's in the WhatsApp chat.
no, I messaged her on Classroom.
And did she respond?
No.
Highly unlikely because she hasn't even attended a class yet.
Yes. So,
The only other thing I could try for you is I can give you the e the student ID number so you can email them.
okay,
That
thank you.
that might be a better way of messaging them on the e-classroom, because I don't think I've seen Miss Mohammed on the e-classroom yet.
Okay.
All right. So although she's been enrolled to the class, she hasn't actually been added to the class just yet. All right.
Okay.
Um, so let's go through the list of people that are new, and we can see who I'll add them to, and there's some challenges with some of them. So the first person is well, let me ask. Um, Miss Phipps is the first person that I need to add, and as she's here, I will do a safe thing. Miss Phipps, I'm gonna add you to Ethan Batista's group. That is presentation 2, chapter 5, understanding others. Would you be okay with that?
Yes, sir.
All right, because you're here, and therefore they can reach out to you, because in terms of urgency, that group is kind of in front of everybody, because their presentation is due on the 30th of September. All right, that sounds okay, Ethan. So you could the Nasia's already have you added yourself to the e-classroom yet? I mean, to the WhatsApp chat group.
Yeah, I just did, sir.
Okay, so she's on the system there. Now another
All
person
right,
who
sir.
has
I'll reach out to her.
right, good. Yeah, I think you all have a, a chat group as well, a private one for you guys.
Yeah, we do.
All right. So another person who hasn't turned up in class yet is Amy Mohan. So that's also somebody we have to look out for. All right. So the next person who just came in, so she's in presentation 2. All right, cool. We have somebody called Angelo Hernandez. Um, I'm gonna put that person with presentation 5 with Kimberly and Abdullah Simon. Okay, guys?
No problem.
All right, let me give you his student ID number, because right now he looks like a brand new student, or at least a brand new enrolled student, may not be um, new, but I haven't been able to put him into the e-classroom yet because his credentials aren't activated for it. So he might be relatively green, so to speak. So the take his number down. His student ID number is 30 80158, and that 800 number is telling us that it's a fairly new student. So once again, that's um, Angelo Hernandez 000800158. So his email address would be, y'all tell me.
30 80158 at mycosta.edu.tt.
My.costa.edu.tt.
My
Don't forget.
dot Costa. Okay.
Yeah, don't forget our first dot. Yeah, your tail could be in
Yeah.
trouble.
All right.
All right. Somebody just came in there. Lincoln, welcome.
Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening, my dear. All right. So we've put him or her, I could never tell, into group 5. Where's Hernandez? Right, group 5. Then we have Shania Kadugan. I'm gonna put her in the next group up, which is Brandon and Ariel. I think Brandon is here.
Yes, sir, I am. The
All
area
right.
too.
Oh, Aria's here. Right. Okay. So take her ID number as well, and you could reach out to her. Kadogan 000777079 at my.costa.edu.tt. Got that?
Yes, sir, I got it.
All right. Cool. All right. Okay. What did I do? So that was group presentation 4. We have um, presentation 3. Wait, I have an extra person for some reason. Bab. Something not correct. Jalen Bab. But that still leaves me with Amora. Did I double book somebody? Oh no, I see what I did. Cadogan is already assigned to somebody. To another group. They just haven't turned up yet. Where is Cadogan? Cadogan was in group 8. What? Cadogan was in nope. All right, hold that. They're in 4. All right. Brandon just came and went just like that. Okay.
Yes, I want to. I'm not with you.
Okay, I see. You switched over. All right. So I seem to have made an error somewhere and booked somebody twice. Phipps, Babs. So I'm putting Babs in group presentation 3. But strange enough, seem to have somebody extra again. So I must have overbooked somebody. Phipps is in 2. Oh, here's Angelo. Hi, Angelo. Mr. Angelo Hernandez. If you can, please open your microphone. Oh, your mic's not working. Okay, cool. Angelo, we've assigned you to a group here with for presentation 5 for chapter 6 of the draft. So I know you're probably kind of at a loss here because you haven't probably been able to log into the e-classroom and that type of stuff yet. So we're gonna have some problems with that. Zahir, what's the question?
Yes, sir. Is Jay Lund here with us today?
Jalen.
Yeah.
Any second name with that?
We just assigned to us presentation 3.
No, she's not. She's not here today. That's why I was gonna give you her ID number so you could reach out and email her.
Okay.
Jalen's ID number is Bab. Okay, 0006911.
You repeat that, sir?
0006911. 69110. 3 zeros
Okay,
before.
sir.
Got that?
Thanks, sir. Yeah.
All right. I still have somebody else to assign, which is kind of weird because that means I've made an error somewhere. And I'm trying to fix it. I've double booked somebody somewhere, I'm pretty certain. Oh, here we go. No. I must have double booked somebody somewhere. Oh, okay. I see what's happening here. We also had somebody leave. So Jennings Dominic has gone. She left. So Jada, I think you're here.
Yes, sir.
Right. So you lost your partner from last week.
Okay.
So you have a new person, Colleen Amora. I knew there was some method to the madness. All right. Let me give you an ID number for her so you could reach out to communicate with her. Colleen is 000600237. Yes?
Okay, I got it, sir.
All right. So if we remember now, I'd have to update this document with the new assignments. We still, I think, from what I can remember, the ad drop doesn't close until Sunday this week. So we still have registration going on as we speak. In fact, I actually had an advisement today with a whole group of people for new classes. So it's kind of thing. But so far, Ned and Durham, you guys are on 1. Batiste, Harry, and Phipps, you're on presentation 2. Peters, Chaitlal, sorry, and Bab, that's a new person. So let me just highlight these new names. Kadogan is the new name in this group here with John and Mohammed. Hernandez, this is the group that you have been assigned to. There is a WhatsApp chat group that we have set up for the class. I will let me just copy the link and put it in the chat here for you, and maybe you can join it there because did you get my message, my email message? Well, you must have gotten both of them, because the numbers. Let me put this in the chat for you and anybody else who might have not yet been able to join the WhatsApp chat group. You could use this link to join it, because you're going to have to communicate with these guys about preparations for the chapter chapter 6 of the DAF Courage and Moral Leadership. And you could just acknowledge whether or not you got my second message about the difficulties of putting you in the e-classroom. Just let me know if you got that message about that problem. Yeah, we saw it. Okay, have you been able to reach out to IT yet? Yes or no? You have to shoot them an email. It didn't. Okay. All right. Angelo, are you a new student this semester? Really is frustrating. Aye. Okay. What program are you doing? Accounting? Okay. Kind of tracks. Did you come in with some transfer credits? Okay, all right. Okay, I'll see what's going on. All right, thanks a lot. Okay, anybody else has any clarification questions that we want to pay attention to at this point? Um, just highlighting these new people that just came in. Amora. Yeah, okay. We need to watch out for this person as well. And Makila Mohammed hasn't turned up in class yet, so for those groups with those individuals, kind of, I'll update the document again on the e-classroom with this newer version, and we'll get that going. All right. Any questions that people want to ask at this point in time in relation to that? If not, I will get ready with my presentation for.
A quick question.
Uh-huh.
If we, when we submit it in terms of the assignment or the group assignment, do we have to submit something physically or we just present it on the day?
No, you're just presenting. I'll be recording it, and that will be between that and the PowerPoint presentation the PowerPoint instrument that you utilize for your presentation. That should be enough for us to to cover the to have enough evidence of your presentation and your work. That makes sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, guys. I want to be able to keep my eyes on the list of individuals here, either to add people as they arrive in class, or just to see if people's hands go up when they want to ask and if they want to ask questions. So I want to get started with the chapter 1 and the preface of this document, but we're going to start a little bit first by looking at the course description. I don't know if any of you all have had an opportunity to look at the course description itself. And a couple of things that we want to point out from it is that, first and foremost, this is an introductory course in leadership. So the expectation is that we're not going to be going heavy into the theory of leadership, but we're going to be skirting around a couple of the issues that we're going to be looking at. The focus of this leadership program is going to be one of personal development, both in terms of your skills for leadership as well as your ethical readiness for it as well. So, as we said before, it's going to focus on your self-analysis of of you as an individual in the context of leadership. We're going to engage in a lot of your own personal exploration of values, and we're going to be looking at trying to apply those things in your decision making, especially in ethical decision making. Now, in terms of the course objectives, the one that I want to focus on is, and basically, there's a number of different things that we're going to be looking at. But the one I want to look at in particular is number 6, is display and modify behaviors indicative of a personal philosophy of positive leadership and ethics. So what do we understand by, have any of you all ever come across the term behavior modification? And what do you understand from that perspective, from that phrase? Let's say I can ask Harry, if you can open your microphone up. Are you sure?
Sir, you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you now. So what do you
What's
understand
the
by that?
question?
What do you understand by the phrase behavior modification?
I'm not really familiar with the with the term.
Uh-huh. Okay. So, how about Jada?
I'm guessing it would be literal to change your behavior in a way that is exemplary of a good leader.
No, well, forget about the rest of the statement. Just that phrase, behavior modification. Have you come across that in the past? Have you heard it before?
I'm not sure. I want to say yes, but it sounds familiar, but I don't know.
Okay, it's not that I expect that you would have studied something like this, huh? But in your experience, have you ever um, has your behavior ever been changed, and how has that behavior been changed in your
Um,
personal experience?
yes. I guess in situations where you're uncomfortable, feel more closed off.
Uh huh.
That would be the first example I could think of.
Anybody else? Rachel Andrews, you have children, Rachel.
Yes, sir.
Do you engage in behavior modification?
Yes, kind of.
What techniques of behavior modification do you utilize?
Probably like incentives.
Uh huh. Okay. Okay. All right. That's all right. All right. I hearing the problems behind you there. All right, guys. You all overthinking this. Behavior modification are those things that happen to us, or we choose to let happen to us, that cause us to change behaviors that we exhibit. When we were children, one of the techniques oftentimes used by your parents to modify your behavior was what? Think.
Like,
Patas.
Katas, that's the damn things.
Punishment.
Yes, punishment of one or the other. In my days, it used to be blows. Right? Let's use a more use of a slightly friendlier term. But yes, licks. We used to get blows, and that would either change your behavior or not. 9 times out of 10, though, external stimulus to behavior modification does not hold up to future endeavors. Meaning that if, in the absence of the police, we behave in a particular manner, think about it from that perspective. So, if you think about behavior modification in terms of our driving habits, if there are no police in the vicinity, or there's no cameras available or to watch what you're doing, we behave badly on the road. Now, some of you may or may not want to agree with this, but the minute we see a police officer, or we see a police car, we start to slow down, we start to pay attention to what we're doing. Would you all agree with me with that?
yeah, that's it.
To a great extent, right? So that's because the behavior modification that is taking place is created or caused by some sort of external form of stimulus, be it a form of punishment or some punitive measure, or maybe just the presence of somebody in your life is causing you to change. Now, true behavior modification occurs from internal stimulus, meaning that you want to make that change. And this course has this very lofty um, objective of behavior modification in you guys. So we in this program or this course will be trying to change your thinking, change your attitude towards leadership and ethics through internally stimulating you to want to make those changes. Because if you really think about it, those are the types of behavior modifications that stand a better chance of surviving um, surviving rather than the ones that require external stimulus to have it shown up. So this is the reason why I wanted to point to this particular course objective, because it is a really very high level of learning that we're trying to attach to this course, which is behavior modification productive environment and one with internal stimulus. So at the end of the day, what we're trying to say is that you should want to want to make those changes and behave in a particular manner based upon the stimulus material that we're going to engage with in the course. And the material that we're looking at is going to come from these two textbooks. Last week I showed you the two textbooks. So it's a combination of different chapters from both these textbooks. And I am going to be going through the first chapter out of the Exploring Leadership here, as well as chapters 2 and 3 will be next week and the following week. Now, when we're looking at leadership here, we're looking at it in the contemporary environment. So we're looking at it in the 21st century. In our time frame, or in the current time frame, we are bombarded by different types of leaders and leadership that comes up. Yes, you have a question? No? Alex? All right.
So mic just came off by mistake.
No, that happens sometimes. Mics go on and off by themselves. Ghosting machines.
Yeah, it came on at the wrong time because I was shouting in the background.
Which means you wasn't listening to me. That's a bad thing. All right. All right. So one of the things that we're going to have to do, because the vast majority of textbooks that relate to to leadership and ethics always have a very U.S. bias. Even the two textbooks we're using, they're out of U.S. colleges and U.S. authors. So it will become incumbent upon us as the presenters of the chapters that we're looking at to bring the Caribbean context, to bring the local relevance of what we're looking at. Because we have to translate the best practices abroad to what we have available here in the country. And sometimes what we're going to be looking at, or what might find, is that we kind of come to the thinking that a lot of what goes on locally is just, or regionally, leaves a lot to be desired when we start to compare to what the theory has to say and what the international environment is showing us. And even things in the international environment tend to be kind of a little ridiculous. So the first thing that the text tries to do is that it tries to define what is leadership. And the problem with leadership is that leadership is it's a intangible quantity. It's not something that you can touch. It's not something you can handle with your hands, but you know when it's in practice, and you can see it in operation. But it just can't be something that you could grab and handle and examine. So in the way in which it's defined here, what we're speaking about is that leadership is about relationships. It's about the relationships we have with people, and the type of relationship, or the quality of that relationship. So that here they're talking about leadership is a relational and ethical process of people together attempting to accomplish positive change. Now, there's a focus here. It's about the relationship that we have as individuals with the leaders and with what we're trying to do. Now, the focus here is on positivity, but through our examination of various leaders throughout history, we would see that positive change or change can be negative as well, and we'll come across some instances where that has been the case. Think about this in the form of, or in a comparison with the types of teachers that you've had in the past. What were those subjects and those classes that you had the most success and the most fun in? It would have been those classes that you had good relationships with your teachers, as a first example. So how many of you all can make this connotation? A lot of you who have had good teachers in the past would have probably done well in that subject matter. But if you had a teacher with whom you had a lot of issues and problems with, or the relationship was really bad, there's a greater likelihood that you might have done worse in that subject, or not as good as you should have. Could you clarify that? Anybody's willing to? Yes, Zaire.
Oh no, I was going to put that react, but I raised my hand instead. But I
No,
was
no,
going to
but
say yeah.
yep, you would agree with that. Do you have a
Yeah.
specific circumstance in which you saw that happening for yourself?
Yes, in high school,
Uh-huh.
during Form 1 to 3, I had a like very good maths teacher.
Yeah.
But from Form 4 to 5, we had a teacher, she never really used to get along with the class, and nobody really used to pay attention to she. And as time go on, she kind of just like never really pay attention to people who not paying attention to she. And the
Uh-huh.
teaching was subpar and all
Right.
because of that.
And what was your results coming out of it? Or did you just forget about her and go to your own classes, did extra
Y-
lessons and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's what I did.
Yeah. So what we would have said, because I had several teachers like that when I went through the system, is that I passed the subject despite my teacher. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or in spite of my teacher, I passed. All right. And I'm pretty certain that there are others among us here who have had similar instances or similar types of situations taking place. The the problem with this is, fine, we had alternatives when you come across a teacher who's really poor, and you have a bad relationship, so you have alternatives that you could utilize to supplement. But consider, for example, you're in a situation where you can't really change the leadership around you. Let's talk about maybe a parent. How do you compensate for the lack of a good relationship and good leadership potential being shown to you from your parents? Or you're working in an organization, you have no choice in relation to who's the boss, and you're working in that circumstance. All right. So similarly, you're in a country and you have a leader in that country, and you don't have the ability to just willy-nilly change leadership. You understand? So this is one of the problems that we're going to have to engage with in terms of how do we treat with situations when it don't go the way we do. But coming back to the point that's been speaking about here, is the way in which the model we're going to look at defines the leadership. When we think of leadership, what we really should be talking about is the relationship that we have with people, and what is the quality of that relationship. What are we doing in those relationships? That's something that we have to pay a lot of attention to. Now, to start to work through leadership, we have to start to look at the various frames of references that we can look at leadership. One of the first frame of references that comes to mind when we think of leadership is politics. So, political science is one where we can view leadership, but it is about looking at leadership only through the lens of power and influence. How do I arrive or get power, and how do I use that power to influence people? That is the focus of this political aspect of leadership. So when we look at these three people here, well, not so much, well, all of these people, they give rise to a particular set of reactions, because this is about the three countries that have some of the most important influences in our world around us from an international standpoint. And if we look at like this here from 2023, this was the G2 summit, or the G20 summit, sorry. These are the leaders from around the world who participated in this event. And these are supposed to be what? The people who we look towards or look up to provide leadership for us moving forward in the world around us. So when we speak about it from this particular instance, so if we go back by this thing here, you'd realize that in this picture here we're looking at three of the most powerful men in the world's economies today. You have two people representing, um, one, the largest economy in the world; two, the largest exporter of goods and services in the world; and you have the guy in the middle who's causing the most amount of trouble in the world right now. All right. So you have, how would you reference these individuals? Good leaders, bad leaders? What kind of leaders would you view them as being? And a lot of this has to do with your own philosophical stance on how leadership ought to work. And a lot of this is going to be dependent upon whether you see any of these individuals being benevolent or whether they're just some sort of dictatorial individuals across in their societies. So through examples, when we're going to be looking at these types of things going on here. So again, in the political framework, when we think of leadership, we think about power and we think about how that power is utilized to influence people and to influence others around you to get what you want. So it's about that type of manipulation across the board. Right. So another frame of reference we can look at is through management. When we think of leadership in the context of management, here we're thinking about controlling businesses and maximizing output from businesses. So in management, what we tend to be looking at really is how effective are you as a manager in engaging with your subordinate staff and achieving the outcomes of the organization. That's the focus of management. So when we start to look at some of these photos, how many of these individuals can you recognize or do you recognize? These are all supposedly top business leaders. Anybody willing to tell me how many of these people you recognize? Good few of them. Yes, Alex.
The easiest two, Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk.
Uh-huh.
That is only the only two I know.
Okay. You
Oprah,
don't know this guy here? Who's this guy?
Jay-Z,
Yeah.
Jay-Z? All right. Who's this guy here?
Jeff Bezos.
Jesus.
Jeff Bezos,
Just right. This guy here.
It's
Gates. This guy here.
Richard Branson.
Uh-huh. Who's this lady here?
Oprah,
Who's this guy here?
Warren Buffett.
Some people know this lady here.
Nah.
She's more a small business. What about this guy here?
The
Maybe
Alibaba.
yes. That so I was gonna say you might know him more for the business
Yeah,
that
I
he.
actually don't know his name.
Yeah, true. I still can't remember his name, but this is Alibaba. Who's this lady here?
That one I'm not sure.
Some of the ladies should know her. I'm being biased. She went to jail actually, and she came out. She still kind of recovered.
Martha Stewart.
Yep, that's who that is. All right, interesting. So this is another guy. He's a Spanish business officer. This is, she's from the IMF. She was one of the first female leaders of the IMF. I don't remember who these guys are here, but neither here nor there at this point in time. All right. So, and this gentleman up here, he's somebody in the United States. I think he's one of the Koch brothers. I want to believe. All right. So we get the idea. When we talk about management, successful leaders in management are profitable. They make a lot of profits. They earn a lot of profits. Does it mean that the people with whom they work for have good relationships? Do they feel good about the jobs that they operate in? Do they feel as if they've been looked after by the company? That's not what is important when it comes to the management focus. All right, that's something else we need to be looking at. Another frame of reference we utilize in terms of evaluating leadership is through the viewpoint of anthropology. Now, anthropology is sort of a retrospective look back at the world. So in anthropology, we examine leadership by looking backwards, by examining what were the cultural influences of a society, what were the languages that they used, the tools that they utilized to do their everyday things, and the symbols that they developed to represent their leadership and represent their various aspects of their culture. and what were their norms in their thing. So if we think about it from that perspective and we start to look backwards a little bit, you realize that we still kind of keep some of those concepts in line from the past. So when we evaluate societies from a historical point of view, one of the elements that we look at is how did leadership work in that society. And in a lot of instances, leadership would have worked through strength, because in some of the older societies, we'd have had the strongest individuals becoming the leaders in that group of individuals. I wanted to say tribe, but or you'd have somebody who was in touch with the mystic powers, or who had knowledge about medicinal uses of plants and so on. These people in those societies would rise to those positions of leadership. Um, so anthropology tells us a lot about the way in which what we held as being important in our lifetime. So, for example, if 2,000 years from now we were to look back on this time frame in the Earth's history, what would what would stand out in our societies as being, what tools you think would be most popularly found in and around our bones and graves and whatnot?
Smartphone.
Yeah, lots of phones. Yeah, right. And that would start to tell us a lot about our communication skills and so on. And how did we arrive at choosing leaders in this type of system? Through a sense of democracy and through some level of popularity among individuals. Those are the kind of situations that we'd find coming up. So anthropology tells us a lot about leadership in terms of how it emerged, how it existed, and so on. So when we're looking at anthropology, we're going to be looking at the physical things that we find in and around the society that we are examining, the culture that developed in terms of foods, language, dress. All those things tell us something about the individuals. Our linguistics, meaning how did we go about communicating through written form or emojis or whatever it is that we utilize for mainstream communication. And of course, the archaeology would be what structures we built, what tools we utilized. All those types of things would come up as part of telling us the story of the past. And also, if we apply that to our current circumstances, we can also see the transition of these things as being important. Another framework through which we look at history, look at leadership, is through history. And when we look at history, what we're looking at are significant times in history and what happens and who emerges in those particular times as being important leaders. All right. So history uh, so we're looking at key individuals who, during significant times in history, when there's some form of social movement or some major activity taking place. So let's look at this. This is a set of old fogies. Anybody recognizes these individuals?
Only Hitler.
Only Hitler.
And Stalin.
And Stalin, okay. Which one is Stalin, by the way? For those people who don't know.
One on the right.
The extreme right. And Hitler is the
And
one with
Churchill
the...
as well?
Yes, that's Churchill with the bowler hat. And who's the guy all the way over on the left?
On the left, that's not US president?
Yes, it's a US president, but which one?
I have no idea which one that is.
Okay. So, you ever looked at Pearl Harbor?
Don't probably, I don't know.
All right. The film Pearl Harbor, yeah, actually. So, these are the four leaders. This was the leader of Russia. That's Joseph Stalin. This was the leader of Germany, Adolf Hitler. This was the leader of England. That's Winston Churchill. And this was the leader of the United States. That was Roosevelt. All right. And these were the key players during the period of what activity? Do you remember? What major event?
One of the world wars.
World
Two.
War
World War Two,
I think
right?
it was two.
Yeah. Okay. And they were they rose to significance because of the event and the circumstances around which they got involved with each other. All right. So there's a lot of as we could say, through history, events took place and people emerged during those periods to lead the countries that they represented in their various positions. This is another leader. Anybody recognizes him?
MLK.
Well,
Martin Luther King.
Dr.
Martin Luther
Martin
King.
Luther
Sorry.
King Jr. All right. So Dr. Martin Luther King was famous for what movement?
Black rights movement, I
Civil
think.
rights movement.
Right. Well, it's actually called the Civil Rights Movement of the 1960s. All right. And of course, he was assassinated during that period. All right, because of the threat that he um, posed to people. All right. So during the civil rights movement, he rose as one of the individuals who represented that movement, and was one of the leaders. Can you think of anybody else who was also during the same period of time that rose to prominence as a leader in the American civil rights movements?
Malcolm X.
Correct. Anybody else comes to mind? Him, Malcolm X. Nobody? All right. Let me
What's the
point
question,
out
sir?
anybody else
Rosa
who
Parks.
Rosa Parks, right? She was a significant person in the movement as well. Yes. All right. So let's look at this question. This person here. Anybody recognizes him?
Don't have a clue.
I have no clue. If I told you he was at Trini.
I'm gonna tell you a lie, sir.
Yeah, well, he's at Trini.
Still
His
no
name-
clue.
Okay. Stokely Carmichael. Ever heard that name?
Nope, never heard it, sir.
Not
Yes.
Kwame Ture. Ever
Nope.
heard that? Kwame Ture. Black Panthers.
Heard of the Black Panthers before?
You heard of the Black Panthers. All right. So Kwame Ture is Stokely Carmichael. That was his original name, but then he changed his name to an African name, which was Kwame Ture. He's a Trinidadian. He actually brought back in the 1970s to Trinidad and Tobago the Black Power movement, which led to the 1970s revolutions that took place in Trinidad. He's associated with that. But he went to the university in the United States, and in the United States during the 1960s, he was there and experienced a lot of the Malcolm X activities and stuff. And he was part of that civil rights movements there, and he saw the same sort of oppression that he saw in the United States happening here in Trinidad, and he kind of brought that idea back and kind of stoked that type of activities here and brought the Black Panther movement, where the Black Panther movement was a little more radical in the sense that the Black Panthers were populated by a lot of membership from Black American Vietnam vets coming back home and realizing, they were fighting for freedom in Vietnam, but they had limited freedoms in America, and therefore they believed in that whole concept of freedom by any means necessary, which is something that Malcolm X was also associated with as well. Let's look at this group of individuals here. All of these people were seen at one point in time in history as being influential in terms of some aspect of the world around us. Now, there are a couple of them we've already met. We've met Adolf Hitler. We've met Franklin D. Roosevelt. We've met Stalin. We've met Martin Luther King. Can you recognize any of the others?
Muhammad Gandhi.
Elvis
Mother
Presley.
Teresa.
All right, so Mother Teresa and Mahatma Gandhi.
Not
Yes.
Gandhi.
All right,
Neil
so
Armstrong.
Neil Armstrong, great. Elvis
Marilyn
Presley.
Monroe.
Marilyn Monroe. Okay. Who are these four funny looking guys here?
The Beatles.
The Beatles, right? So you have different aspects of the world around us, um, and different aspects of history that they influence. So Marilyn Monroe had to do with the movies and that type of stuff. We have the Beatles and Elvis Presley that was associated with music. Um, Anybody knows this lady here? Her nickname was the Witch.
Thatcher?
Yes, she's Margaret Thatcher. How did you get that? All right. What about this gentleman here?
Nelson Mandela.
Nelson Mandela.
Yep. Okay. So you recognize that a lot of these individuals were part and parcel of a very important element or part of history. Um, so you may not know this, but this gentleman here is what's his name? Ooh, just went in and out of my mind. Um, well, what do you remember Nelson Mandela being important for? What was it, what part in history did he play? Anybody remembers? Wow.
It reminded me of the term Mandela effect, but I don't know if that's associated with him.
Well, maybe,
Was it
but
associated with the apartheid?
yes. So the gentleman next to him is a guy who's Cecil Roach. All right, he was part and parcel of the system that set up apartheid in South Africa. All right. Um, so these two people were linked together because of that system of apartheid that was set up in South Africa. The person who kind of was the stalwart for its growth and development, and the individual who broke it down afterwards. All right. So one of the reasons why they've positioned their two photos together like that. Um, these two individuals here, you all would recognize Ronald Reagan here. He was one of the first presidents the last president to hold the post for 3 consecutive terms. Um, and that actually created a problem. It's why they have the two term limits now. You all know that about that right now. Because in his third term he had advanced dementia, and it was one, it was embarrassing, but two, it was also dangerous for somebody who had that amount of power and control to to have that amount of to have somebody who was mentally unfit to be in a position of that amount of power. Um, so these three individuals here kind of associated with each other. This is you all recognize this guy here?
Fidel Castro.
Fidel Castro, right? And he was important for the rise of socialism in Cuba and, of course, the associated types of activities. This guy is Khrushchev. He was the premier of the Soviet Union during its heyday, so to speak, when it was probably at its most vocal and most powerful in terms of the arms race and so on. And this gentleman here was at the helm of Russia or the Soviet Union at its fall when it sort of ended. Anybody remembers who he is in terms of history?
No, don't have a clue.
Yeah. Okay. So he was associated with the transition of the Soviet Union out of its socialist setup into its current system of, well, supposedly democracy of a type. Khrushchev, and this is Gorbachev. So you think about those names from there. All right, so let's leave these guys for now, and let's look at another framework under which we have um, leadership that is looked at under psychology and sociology. Of course, psychology would look at the individual, sociology would look at groups. All right. So how do they work through this thing? So primarily, a lot of the theorists, So for anybody here who's done this, we have Sigmund Freud, we have Karl Marx, and we have B.F. Skinner. The reason why I've highlighted these people is because their work is kind of pivotal in the development of some of the modern theories of leadership that we're going to examine, especially the work of B.F. Skinner and some work from Sigmund Freud, some from Karl Marx as well. So some of those theories that we're going to be looking at are these here. And we'll get into them in more details in a subsequent uh, presentation, a different chapter that I will be dealing with. So when we're looking at this, let's start to ask the question in your mind: how do you feel about leadership, and more importantly, how does the field of study that you are engaged in deal with leadership? So if we think about, like, for example, we have a fair number of accounting students here with us. In accounts, how do people arrive at leadership position in accounting firms? Well, either through ownership of the firm, which means they have the amount of capital that they're able to control, and therefore, once they control that capital and have that flow of funds, they are able to hire the people around them to become the leaders. But more importantly, in a lot of instances, you find that you have to spend some years working in the field to be able to arrive in a position of leadership. Now, are there other all right, so I think we have some mass communication people here. Can't remember them offhand. If you can identify yourself and just discuss with us, or just outline for us, how does your field, um, you know, how do leaders emerge in your field? Let's see. I really can't remember all of these people. Ned, what you're in environmental area, right?
Yes, sir.
Right, and well, you're in a leadership position in your organization right now. And how did you arrive in that position? Through what? Study? Or
Both study, interest, years of service.
Service. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
good. So it's a
I think that is
combination of. All right. Now, if we think about the public sector in terms of in Trinidad, and in a lot of instances, a lot of people arrive in positions of leadership because of the amount of time they've spent working on that particular job. Now, of late, and a more modern approach to things is people arrive in leadership positions based upon a better combination of leadership, well, not leadership studies, but qualifications and experience. So training and experience kind of lead you into that position there. But some systems are kind of old to change or slow to change through that period there. Any questions in this area here so far, guys? No?
No, sir, no, sir.
All right, okay, let's move along. Okay, so the framework that we're going to be looking at is called the relational leadership model. That's the model that we're going to be spending a lot of time looking at. In fact, the entire model that you all are going to examine is called the relational leadership model. The text will start to abbreviate it to the RLM model. Now that sits upon a background or on the foundation of psych and education studies that were done in the past. So that's one of the reasons why that framework of psychology, sociology, and education, because especially the area of adult education, kind of gives us a foundation on which to lean to develop the model that we're going to look at here. The model then requires that, one, we spend a good bit of time learning about yourself, learning about how others perceive you, which is self-awareness in the context of others, and understanding, most importantly, your personal value structure. What are the things that you hold dear to you? What are, where's the position, what's the final line? What won't you do to get things done, and that type of stuff. So your personal value system is going to be your ethical values that you hold there. Okay, so that's what the framework is going to be. In order for that development, therefore, to take place, it requires, of course, the development of self awareness, effective listening, collaboration, which is the ability to work with other people, compromise, which is one of the tools required for effective collaboration, and of course, putting all these things in practice. The most difficult of these items here actually is effective listening. So we have some communication students, I think some mass communication students among us here. Could you tell me what is effective listening? Uh, I don't want to call any names, but I'd love you to volunteer um, the communication majors. I think, Denisha, you are a communication person? Miss Phipps?
No, sir, I'm doing graphics.
Okay, but somebody.
Sir,
Tiffany, yes, Miss Wint, you're the communication person. All
Yes,
right.
sir. I think effective listening
Mm-hmm.
is understanding what the other person is saying. So taking time to actually listen and hear what they're saying and then make judgment based on that.
Oh, okay. Probably, what is the most important thing for you to do during that process of listening?
Not speak.
That's one good thing,
Internalize
yes.
what I'm saying.
Uh-huh. Anything else comes to mind besides focusing on the individual and pausing your your speech?
Not right now, no.
Can't think of anything else?
Feedbacks.
Anybody? Sorry?
Feedbacks like the person is talking and yeah.
Giving feedback or
Yeah,
Um.
so
Go ahead.
responding.
responding? Okay. Don't know what those are about.
So it depends on the length of the conversation. We could possibly take notes. We could pay attention by focusing on the words that the person saying or the point they're trying to make.
Mm-hmm.
We could also, give constructive feedback
All
in
of
terms
those
of like
things.
your opinion or unopinionated
Okay.
feedback.
Yeah. All right. So you see that part there about giving feedback. So when you're talking to somebody who might be just telling you how they feel because maybe something bad has happened to them, what is the tendency to do? What is our tendency to do?
Give
Sympathize.
Sympathize, and how do we end up
Draw,
sympathizing?
ref- draw reference to similar experiences
Right.
that we
And very good. Now that's a problem. You know why? That means we are effectively putting a barrier in place to stop us from actually listening to what the other person is saying, because we are evaluating what they're saying, utilizing our own frame of reference. To be able to effectively listen to somebody, we actually have to prevent that from happening, because we are self-judging the person based upon our belief structure. So,
I think also with um preventing self-judging as well.
correct,
Um,
yes,
to
that's it.
build a good relationship with the people you're leading, you have to make sure they feel comfortable speaking to you. And the best way to do that is not barging while they're speaking to you. Be quick to listen and slow to speak basically. Stay quiet, hear their thoughts and let them get comfortable with you and what they're trying to say, and just step back and listen to what they have to say rather than barging in and stopping them to give them your opinion.
That's correct, yes. Excellent.
So,
Yes.
so I feel like to help with that too, trying to understand and see things from their perspective and now yours just help a lot as well.
Yeah, well, yep, that's correct. Those are the things that we have to do to be able to effectively listen to person, which is really to walk a mile in their shoes, but not feel the need to constantly, you know, yeah, and we have a tendency to do this, we're listening to somebody, talk about, something really bad that's happened to them, and we start to put it in context of, what happened to us with something similar, and we've really just dismissed them. Yes, Ned.
So when I spoke about feedback, so in the context of like what you were doing, so they were speaking and you were like, okay, how do you, what is that then?
That
Like the
is
person,
encouragement to encourage somebody to
okay,
continue responding. That indicates I'm listening.
okay, then you
You know,
got the response there.
without visual cues, right?
Mhm.
I can't look them in the eye and give them that kind of attention, because right now I can't actually see my images as well. So verbal cues as opposed to visual cues, those are things that we tend to utilize for communication, for openness and so on. But the feedback we tend to give is judgmental. And this becomes critical, especially when we are speaking with somebody about something with which we have very strong opinions about. And that is something that we have to be, very cognizant about across the board, because it affects our ability as a leader if we're seen as being very judgmental. Now, if you ever follow, how many of you all follow the maybe you do or maybe you don't, the American elections system, or the current elections? Yes, Awani.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I was just indicating that I do.
All right, Ari, I see you do it as well. Okay.
Yes, sir. I was just indicating as well.
Okay, cool. Now, if you pay attention, one of the interesting things that I've always seen is that anytime somebody comes up with to represent people, the first thing that the media, for example, tries to find out from these leaders or these potential leaders is their position on certain critical matters in their society. One, abortion. Two, gun control. Three, the government spending. Four, trade. You ever realize that? See,
Yes.
Arya hand.
By immigration. So
Immigration, and there are more and more items that start coming. Yes, you're right about immigration, and it forces a leader to have to make judgment, and therefore once they state where they are, they get pigeonholed or put into a position. You're either a liberal, or you're a leftist, or you're centralist. So I mean, the media love to just label people and pigeonhole them and push them all over the place, especially the U.S. media, and that actually is really a negative development, because it doesn't give the freedom of the individual to have the ability to choose a position and then change the position in the future, because changing your position in the future becomes like, you're turning your back on this group of people and this kind of stuff. It's really, really something else. So leadership in the political environment is fraught with a lot of problems. But if we think about leadership from within, our everyday lives, the ability to listen and not cast or provide judgment is a very important element in terms of developing your leadership skills. Arya, see your hands up. You wanted to ask a question, or you just left your hand up?
Sorry, what I said.
That's okay. No, it's just I just want to clarify. All right. So, foundation principles of leadership that we have to also accept is that leadership concerns us all. And I know when we are younger, a lot of times we look at politics and we say that's not for me, that's not my business, that kind of stuff. And really, as you get older, you start to realize, and as you mature, not necessarily as you get older, but as you mature, you start to recognize the importance of leadership to us all, because regardless of whether or not we pay attention to what leaders do or not, the decisions that they make impact our lives on a daily basis. All right. But as a leader, we have to recognize that other people around us view and value leadership differently. So for some it is critical, for others it's marginal. For some it's even something that I could just ignore and I could go by myself and live my life alone. That's the kind of thing. You have to be aware that people don't look at leadership the same way you might look at leadership. Similarly, this class is asking you to pay attention to leadership, whereas you might be perceiving as this is something that I'm not going to worry about because I don't think I'll ever want to be in a position of leadership. But think about it. How many of you here are parents?
Yeah, Mr.
Yeah.
I'm a parent as well.
You can just put your hands up, I'll be able to get a count. So 2, 3, 4, right. And you don't, and how many of you, though not biologically a parent, still in charge of other people around you? And we call that having dependents. All right. Yeah. So those are positions of leadership that you may find yourself in that are not the traditional viewed types of leadership. Yes, Dennis, yes. Your hand up. Is it a question or are you just saying that you have dependents?
I'll just agree with you, sir.
Cool. No worries. All right. So another foundation principle of leadership is that leadership is not a static thing. Like most things in life, they are constantly changing and evolving. And therefore, as a leader, we have to be willing to change and to mold ourselves and adapt to the circumstances that face us. Some people may see that as being um, a negative thing. Some people see it as being a positive thing. Um, there's arguments for and against, and we could look at that. Another assumption that we have to look at, or principle that we need to look at, is that different settings require different types of leadership styles. So one style is not a wear-it-all for everything. And unfortunately, we have a tendency for a lot of leaders, especially in business activities, that they have one style of leadership, which tends to be very autocratic, and they use that autocratic style of leadership for everything that they do inside that business or inside or in and around them. The fact that remains here is that autocratic leadership has a role and has a place, but it's not the only method you can utilize to get things done and to work with other people. That's the difference here. The last and what probably most critical one is that leadership is not something that people are born with, but it's something that can be learnt and developed. Now that is something that we're going to have to deal with, because a lot of people still perceive leadership as something that are features that you're born and you can't really develop it. It just naturally happens that you're a natural born leader kind of thing. And not natural about born leadership. Trust me. All right. So further development of your leadership
I
skill.
think becoming a leader, um, I think you're right about that. Is not something you'll be born into, because this is not a fairy tale world. But I think everyone has the chance to become a leader, but it's something you have to put a lot of work into. Yeah, it's something you have to put a lot of sacrifice into.
That's
So I
good.
do
That's correct.
believe I do believe everybody can become leaders, but it's how willing are they to become leaders?
That's correct. Yes, very, very good. Uh-huh. Okay. All right. So the work that we talk about here also includes critical thinking, the development of critical thinking, your development of your credibility, authenticity, integrity, and your ethical standards. Now, critical thinking is something that is it's not as easy to get into critical thinking because the system of education around us doesn't encourage critical thinking. We prefer people who are more along the lines of, more agreeable to work with. Critical thinking means critically analyzing things. And if we critically analyze things, we would start to question why certain things are done in particular ways or why we're doing certain things. And that leads to a lot of challenges when you're dealing with other people who are, in leadership positions around you, who don't necessarily want to have critical thinkers because they become problematic for management purposes. It's very difficult to to manage somebody who has the ability to reason things out and say, well, no, this is not making sense. And then you find yourself getting into trouble like that. Your credibility, authenticity, and integrity are all kind of connected to your ethical values. So for you to be authentic and credible, for people to believe you when you say what you want to do, is all of these things are connected. So it's important that you develop these skills and maintain your authenticity and integrity. So you don't do things to break it down. Now it doesn't mean that you can't make mistakes, but just what you need to remember, especially with integrity, is that if your integrity is damaged through some of your activity or conduct, then you're going to find that it's going to be very difficult for you to recover from circumstances and situations like that. All right, so that's something for you to think about as well. All right, so there is a basic format that we're looking at in terms of developmental process. The first part of it is called the knowing part. You must know yourself. First and most critical thing. And we don't just mean, well, I am who I am kind of thing. We must know ourselves through and through. This is one of the reasons why you have to engage in the self-analysis. That is one of the assignments that you need to do. You have to engage in a detailed breakdown of who am I and how have I become the person I am today. What are the things that have happened to me? Who are the people who have helped develop me to be the person I am? What are the things that I've done myself? What is the philosophies I've developed about the world around me? How do I interact with the world, and why do I interact with the world in this manner? Those are the things that you're trying to work through. All right. We also need to know how change occurs around us, both in ourselves and in other people and in the environment. We need to understand that. So it's all well and good to say that you understand somebody, but or you don't like somebody, for example. This is something I always tell some of my students. There's something about the behavior of somebody you may not like. But if you spend time to evaluate why the person behaves the way they do, then you get beyond just having an emotional reaction to the person, and sometimes you might actually be able to, be a little more sympathetic towards the person, despite knowing that what they're doing is a horrible thing. It's sort of like, so some of you might find this a bit strange. Oftentimes I've come across individuals, men in particular, who hit women. And one of the things that I've recognized is that a lot of men hit women because they grew up in an environment where that was something that was shown to them as at a very early age in particular. That women were to be made to do what you wanted, and for whatever reason in that household, it wasn't discouraged by other members of the family. So, more importantly, women who grew up in that type of environment also perceive that if a man cares about you, he will hit you. Now, let's hear how people feel about what I just said there. I am not condoning what the person does, but what I have come to realize is that a lot of what we see around us in terms of violence towards women comes from the way in which we've socialized ourselves or socialized women and men in the past, in the environments. And unfortunately, the problem still occurs, especially the further away from city centers you go. Well, not necessarily. Even in built up and rich environments, or prosperous environments, you still have that same activity that goes on, and it stays behind closed doors. Anybody has any concurring statements or other statements to make? Yes, Alex.
I would say it has a lot to do with showing example as well. 'Cause I would use it from a fatherhood aspect. When you
Mm-hmm.
become a father and you have a family, your kids gonna look up to you from a young age. What they see you doing, they're gonna want to learn how to do it. Whatever they see you doing, they're gonna eventually do it. And it's
Correct.
your job to set that example, to show them the correct way, to correct them when they're wrong, and be a role model to them. And I think that's where the problem lies. Is some fathers weren't doing that. They were living how they wanted to live, and they weren't considering
Mm.
what their children were seeing.
Yeah. But Alex, what I want you to think about is if you look back at the behavior of those fathers, did you find out why they were behaving the way they were?
Well,
That's the
so,
interesting.
so maybe they saw it back in their past and see it as something that's normal to do.
Correct.
That's pretty much what I think was it.
No, I have Miss Lincoln coming up here. It's interesting. Yes, Miss. Your hand is up.
Yes, sir. I think it has a lot to do that with model behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So what they would have seen coming up from their parents, they would not think that that is what is right, and they would model that behavior as children.
Mm-hmm.
But when you come into adulthood now, that is where you have to think as an individual.
Right.
But what you would have experienced growing up has a great effect now on that on the way that you're thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
But
why we see a lot of people falling back into the habits that their parents or grandparents or whatever
mm-hmm.
would have portrayed to them.
Yep. Yep.
And it would not just with the male figure, but with the female figure.
Females as
Let's
well.
just
Correct. Yeah.
right. So if daddy hitted mommy, boys growing up seeing daddy hitted mommy and grow up to be men who think that it's okay to hit women. But then girls on the other hand who grow up seeing daddy hitting mommy and mommy crying in a corner, but she stayed sticking it out. And
Yeah.
these girls tend to grow up to be women who end up in relationships, being
With
abused,
abusive
and
men.
treated it because
Yep.
mommy went through it and she didn't leave daddy or take any action. She just stick it out.
Yes, that is quite correct. So there's two sides of the coin, right?
Yes, of course.
Right.
And then we have mommies who beating daddies as well.
Correct. You have the reverse situation. Spoken about a lot, but there are men who are not necessarily physically abused by women, but maybe mentally and verbally abused on a regular basis, and the word is emasculated, I guess, is the terminology we could utilize as well. All right.
Yes,
Kiana, I
yes.
notice your mic is open. Did you want to contribute, Miss Regis?
No, sir, I didn't realize it was open.
Okay, all right. It's not. It wasn't bothering us, actually, but I just saw the mic open. All right. So we understand now, knowing yourself, how change occurs, and how and why others view things differently than you. That's the last part we were just talking about there. Why do people see things different to you? And a lot of times, that knowing element helps to solve a lot of problems when we have differences with people or we are trying to work through difficult relationships with other people. That's going to be one of the things that helps us with that. The All right. So to help us with this, let's look at this picture here. What do you see?
A woman sitting in front of a mirror.
Uh huh. Anybody seeing anything else?
A skull.
No.
Yeah.
A skull with
Yeah.
Yeah.
eyes
First
and
image of
teeth.
skull. Yeah.
Uh huh.
Second image is yeah, you're seeing two images. One with
Yep.
a skull and the next image with a person in a mirror.
All right. So let's hold on. Everybody seeing both those images for this one?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
so I'm seeing this
Yes, sir.
one.
All right, cool. All right, so we're going to look at another image next. And if you've come across this image before, don't say anything. Don't spoil it for everybody else. So let's see what.
Yes, sir.
All right, how many of you all first off have seen this before?
Me, sir.
All right, so you hush up. All right, so you hush up. What are you seeing here? Anybody?
I have no idea.
A lady in a fur coat.
A lady in a fur coat. Is she looking down, up, sideways? What?
Sideways, facing sideways.
A lady in a fur coat. Would you say it's a young lady or old lady?
Young.
A young lady looking over her shoulder in a fur
Well,
coat.
I seen the old one now.
You seen an old woman looking down?
I saw both of them,
Yes,
but
I
I
see
saw the young one first.
All right. Interesting.
So
Yeah.
I'm seeing an old lady as well. I
All
saw the
right.
young lady first, and
Uh-huh.
I'm seeing an older lady
Very good. Perception,
with a
right?
big nose and a little sad mouth.
All right. Everybody seeing two ladies in this image?
No.
No, I'm only
No,
seeing
sir.
one person.
All right.
Yeah,
So
me too. I'm only seeing one person.
which person are you
Yes,
seeing?
sir. Just take
A
now.
lady looking to the left.
A lady looking over her shoulder, right?
Yes, that's all I'm seeing.
Correct. Me too.
Right? Anybody else seeing the only seeing the young lady looking over her shoulder?
I'm only seeing the young lady looking over her shoulder.
All right. Okay. So
Yeah,
let all right. So let's do a little exercise here for those of you who are having problems seeing this the old lady. Close your eyes. All right. Now open your eyes and listen to what I have to say. There's an old lady looking down. This is her chin. This is her mouth. This is her nose. This is her eyelash. This is
Yes,
her other
yes.
eye. This is the front of her hair. This is her hair scarf. This is a feather coming out of the top of her hair scarf. And all of this is like a shawl around her. Everybody seeing that now?
Yeah, I'm seeing it now, sir. Although I'm still somehow focusing on the lady looking over her shoulder, but
Right,
I'm
because
seeing it.
that's what your mind's focused on. But it's interesting that you see the young lady first and not the older woman. In psychology tests, they always say it's indicative of something about your mind in terms of who you are as a person. You know, they always talk about that kind of stuff. All right, everybody else is seeing the two images that we're talking about now. The young lady and the old person.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So there are lots of little exercises like this you can find online to check your perception of things. This is one of the reasons why a lot of arguments happen. And that's because we are unwilling to look at things from the perspective of somebody else. Because both of these guys are right. Because from where they stand, it's a 9 or 6, right? Have you ever been in a situation where you're seeing an argument taking place about something and it's obvious to you is that their perception from from where they stand or where they position themselves is causing the problem? Have you ever looked at arguments taking place around you and it's a matter of perception, not really understanding?
Yeah, the one with the wedding dress, sir. That was a big one. That used to cause a lot of conflicts, if you remember that one.
I don't remember. Tell us about it. I'm not clear.
The one where now for me, I always saw black and blue was the color of the dress, but some other people saw like white and gold or some madness. It was a very widely discussed thing, and I saw a lot of quarreling take place because one person saying dark and gold and the other one saying black and blue and oh no, white and gold, sorry. But yeah.
Okay. I have to get the proper context for that. Maybe you could tell me what it is later on. All right. But the thing about the point I'm trying to make here in the knowing is that if you remember really what this is related to, this is knowing. We need to understand each other. And as a leader, the emphasis or the The onus is on you to do the work necessary to see the other side of things. It is not the other person's responsibility, but the onus is on you. And recognize that if you are in conflict with somebody, that it was not really there. It's not about what they were saying, but it was about perception issues. And recognize sometimes that I had the wrong idea of what was going on. All right. The next part of this three principle area is the being part. If you want to be a good leader, then you must be ethical. You must be principled. You must be open, caring, and inclusive. Now, there are problems here. Ethical and principle we can work on. Open and caring and inclusive are problematic because a lot of people, in terms of the way in which they become principled, they begin to become less open to variety, less open to differences. And as a result, that openness starts to create exclusion rather than inclusion. And we then don't care about those types of individuals as a result. So there is an apparent confusion or conflict here in terms of being ethical and principled. Um, and and also being open and caring to people who don't necessarily fall into what your principles are. So you find that that happens a lot with a lot of people who become very dogmatic in their approach to people that they want around them or individuals they want to associate with. And this has led to a lot of conflict. And recently, we see a lot more of it because social media is allowing the capture and upload and sharing of a lot of these conflicts out there that people engage in and people publicize simply because it's clickbait, so to speak, kind of thing. Um, so can you think of circumstances where your principled thinking or your ethical values can lead you to be less open and caring?
Yes, maybe because of your culture, because of your background, your history.
Yeah, but in what? Give me some circumstance.
Probably, like I would say, like the area you probably would have grown up.
Uh-huh.
They would have found that people weren't as open and caring.
In what
Perhaps.
in what context?
Growing up in an area that may not be people focused, maybe selfish focused, maybe everyone is trying to do for their own self or their own person or family, so to
Okay.
speak.
Okay. So, Ramol, I think I know what you're trying to hint at, but interestingly enough, in this class, we are going to have to engage in examining some very sordid parts of our reality and our society. So, what we have to start to think about here is not buttering up or prettying up what we're saying, but really being honest. Let's think about a circumstance where you're dealing with somebody who has alternative sexuality in terms of their lifestyle choices. That's one of the things that often comes into um, somebody who is dogmatic in their approach. They are not open to accepting that person in and around them, and therefore they don't care about them and they don't care to include them in the activities of the organization. So we don't want any gay people around. We don't want any what you call it uh, well some anybody whose alternative lifestyle conflicts with your own, or it may be along ethnic and racial lines. We don't want anybody who's not Indian or not African or the various
From the
connotations of.
ghetto.
Yeah, you're from the get exactly. That's another thing. Economic stigma or economic status
Religion
that
and
create
all too.
religion creates another set of different dogmatic approaches to dividing people. And interestingly enough, Politics also does the same thing too. You're not a member of this party. We don't want you here. We don't care about you. It's my time now. All those kind of phrases becomes problematic in the development of true leadership. If you're being ethical and principled, those things mean you apply the ethics and the principles that you've developed, the standards, to everybody, regardless of what walk of life they follow. And that's a very difficult thing to do. A very simple thing that I've seen happen in and around my experience with school, for example, is a lot of times staff, faculty in particular, they don't like to socialize with cleaners and janitorial staff. Why? That might happen in and around you where you work. Why do you think that might be the case?
They
Because
see them as lower than them because of their job.
and they kind of scorn them because they have to do all this dirty work, right? That kind of icky feeling around people. And you're right. They may have to do some of the worst things in life around us, but does that mean they're less of a person? Nope. You might also have people who don't engage with other people because they feel they're less educated. That's another kind of thing. This quotation from Richard Branson was really something that kind of hones in on this point. Caring about people is important. You can't be a good leader unless you care about people, and that's how you're going to demonstrate it through that whole concept of being open, caring, and inclusive. That's something that, but it's difficult because we live in a world where everything is measured against each other, and that's part of the problem that we face. Now, the last part here is we know we have the knowing, being, and now we have the doing part. We must act in a social responsible manner that is consistently and congruent with our belief structures as a participant in your community and in your commitments and passions. So let's kind of go through this a bit, as I might have kind of rumbled around. So we have to behave socially responsible. Now we're going to talk more about what socially responsible is, but it has a lot to do with what is right for the society we're existing in. Consistently and congruently. Consistently means in every instance we are utilizing the same principles across the board. Congruently, it means that across all different aspects of your life, you are being consistent in the application of your ethical values and principles. As you participate in the community you live in, on those things that you commit yourself to, and to those aspects of your activities that you're passionate about, which could be, whatever aspects of the world around you that you have an interest in. We have to behave in a socially responsible manner everywhere. You can't be, Mr. Dot the I's and cross the T's at work, and when you get home, you don't care how it hang, it swing, that kind of stuff. There was one lady here who I think, no, wrong class. What are some of the passions you have in life? Anybody here has? No, we have a graphic artist here, so I think maybe art might be a passion of yours. Or are you doing graphic artist's work as just a vocation, as a occupational thing? Dennis, yeah?
Well, so far it just normally has been a hobby for me,
Like,
but further along the line, perhaps it could be something more.
all right. So in essence, you've taken a passion and now you're studying it, right?
Yeah,
Do you think it's hurting your passion for the thing that you're doing?
not exactly, because I
All
do
right.
enjoy it.
Right. That's the important thing. Um, and that's what I mean. When you're engaging in artwork, the and creativity, not just only in drawing and stuff like that, but in engaging in that particular type of activity, the standards and ethical values that you apply to that ought to be the same that you apply across the board for everything. Right? That's what we talk about, being consistent and congruent in the application of it, being socially responsible. All right. So that doing part is the critical part that we're going to end up dealing with. So when we say social responsible, that is principles in addition to well, this is social responsibility in the context of business activities. So the principle that in addition to pursuing profit generations, corporations should strive to act in a way that positively affects society and the world. Now, this is something that a lot of businesses have of late, or in the last 10 years, been paying a lot of attention to, because they need to look at, well, they tend to want to look at how they are perceived in the society around them. So if we think about banks, for example, banks have for years suffered from very negative responses from society because they've been seen as being unfair. They cheat. They really are only about making profit and forget about the poor man kind of situation. So you find that banks and other financial institutions engage in a lot of visible, socially responsible activities to try and negate the negativity of the overall picture of what banks and financial institutions look like. And there are other firms and business activities that fall into this category that have to make um, a show at looking and sort of like showing themselves to be socially responsible. The whole point about it, though, is that if in the act of generating profits, you need to make sure that everything that you do is positive for the society you have to operate in, because eventually one day things will fall apart. All right? All right. So, though we've just looked at that three-step process there, or three stages of what we need to get involved with, the simple fact is that leadership is not a step-by-step process, that step one and then step two. No. We have to think about leadership as trying to work on ourselves and develop a personal philosophy that is more circular in thinking, because we're not really circular but outwardly spiraling, in that when we go through a process and we've developed some ideas and skills in terms of developing our leadership and our capacity for leadership and understanding others, we have to realize that we need to run again and start it all over again, and this time spiral outwards, improving and increasing our perception of the world around us. And one of the things that actually helps with broadening our perception is travel, because when you travel, you look at how other countries and other cultures look at some of the same problems or issues that you face in your personal life. So your personal philosophy becomes more broad based, more all inclusive. It takes into consideration a wider ambit of the society that we live in globally. And those are the kind of things that you would probably want to engage in. All right. The core values remain core, but the application of those core values to the world around you has to be something that you work at doing across the board. So in order to get that done, we usually develop this idea that we have to work hard at getting things done, right? So the text that we're looking at, the model that we're looking at, says no. The hard work paradigm is not something that we want to just sit on. It's too simplistic. Yes, developing leadership and developing your skills in any form or fashion or any discipline is going to be some hard work, but we need to be able to work smarter. So when they say work smarter, they talk about collectively smarter, reflectively smarter, and spiritually smarter. So collectively smarter is the recognition that we work better and we get more solutions if we work as teams or in groups, because all of us is smarter, or all of us are smarter than one of us. Now, This is a difficult circumstance for people who are unaccustomed working with others. Let's put it that way. All right. All of us are smarter than one of us, and that is a perception thing. Simply because, especially if you're very strong-willed, you want things to go your way. But consider the perceptions and the ideas from several people looking at the same problem can bring to bear a number of different solutions that maybe even you couldn't have brought to mind, because you're not coming from the same bundle of experiences, the same bundle of environmental influences that bring to bear on the problem that's at hand. So one of the things that as a leader we must always recognize is that as a group we bring a broader we automatically bring broader perception to look at a problem that's in front of us. All right, so that's why we say we are collectively smarter than any individual. All right, reflectively smarter also means that as a leader, you have to be constantly taking time to find the meaning in what you're doing and to find meaning in reflecting on what took place in the past to understand what's happening in the future. And too often we can't do this. So, like, for example, um, in my line of work, we are supposed to be reflecting on past classes and trying to make improvements to our classes coming forward. But the way in which the work flows, it is from teaching class into marking, into posting grades, into advisement, into, so it's a never-ending process, and that time frame for reflection becomes problematic. In fact, all of your lives probably run that way. You're running from home to work to school, back, back to work first thing in the morning. You're fighting with other issues with your family or your social world around you. You're dealing with financial crisis and financial issues in your household. You're dealing with whatever problems you have at work, and it's an ongoing process, and that reflection time is not available. Good leadership requires that we take some time and find some time to be able to reflect on things so that we don't repeat the mistakes of the past, because we're not learning from them. And that's something that often happens. We tend to um, so one of the things that I like to make this think this through is, how many of you have gone through relationship after relationship and they've all seemed to go the same way? Have you ever paused and evaluated your relationship to work out, well, why am I always having the same outcomes or similar outcomes? Possibly because we're doing the same thing over and over again. Definition of insanity, by the way, just to say. But have you sat down and really thought about why these things are happening? And it need not only be in relationships with somebody in a romantic sense, but also relationships in terms of your friendships, your family, and that type of stuff. Why are you having similar types of outcomes all the time? And nothing's changing. And it's probably because you're not taking the time to reflect. In fact, a lot of us have problems in this because reflection is difficult, because it means asking very difficult questions and accepting difficult truths that say that I am doing something wrong. And that's a challenging thing to go through. And sometimes a sobering thing and a shameful thing to do sometimes too. But I hope you all get to the opportunities that you're going to do. Now, spiritually smarter does not necessarily refer or reflect any form of religious or actual spiritual thing. But what we're talking about in this case here is being spiritually aware, or just being aware of what are the things that are most important to us in terms of our belief structure and the principles that guide our behavior. And we were talking about this before when I gave the example or the illustration of people who have grown up with um, the stigma of maybe abuse in their families as being normal. Because when we talk about those principles that remain to our core, this is what happens. Why do some people resort to violence as an answer to problems that they have? It's simply because that is a belief structure or value or a process that they've seen and accepted as being core to them. That in order to get their way, they have to use physical force to get it done. And that's why we say if you want to know the true value of somebody, look at them not at the best of times, but at the worst of times, and what do they do? Do they in that time frame when they are in the worst possible situation, they're having the most awful day or the awful time of their lives, are they cheating? Are they stealing? Are they hiding the truth? Are they whatever? What are they doing during that period? Because that tells you what their true values are. Again, reflecting on how you behaved during a period where you were challenged in this manner is also important for you to realize as a form of self-development. Or maybe I shouldn't have done that simply because you know, my value system is all screwed up or something along those lines. This is one of the reasons why when people behave the way they do, I always try to find, well, why is this person behaving that way? Why did they hit out? I mean, I see all these road rage incidents. Well, of late, I've been paying attention to them on these YouTube shorts that I see, and I'm always amazed at. Okay, somebody drove and they did absolute rubbish. Does it mean that you have to drive in front of them, stop the car, and then run out and try and beat them, or put yourself at more risk? Because I mean, have any of you all engaged in road rage activities? Have you ever found yourself so pissed off in a car while you're driving that you want to run down the other person? Hard question to answer. No, nobody's had road rage. I want to see
Yes, yes.
how much lying going on here. All right, Ramal, thank you for being
Yes, yes,
honest.
yes. I have.
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, when people do things that annoy you, you will get angry, and how you respond is going to be an indication of what your true values are. That's the takeaway that you need to get from that. Um, and you want to run them down and beat the living daylights out of them. You want to cuss and carry on. That's what you're valuing. You're valuing your own safety among other things. But I mean, again, you need to evaluate what you're doing and why you're doing what you're doing. Okay. So, because somebody might engage in road rage activities because of a um, past circumstance where somebody got killed in a car accident because somebody else did something like drunk driving or something along those lines. You never know what's sitting at the back of somebody's life there that will shock you. All right. Okay, so during the developmental process, we're going to be looking at paradigms. Now, paradigms are, we spoke about paradigms before. Some people like to say paradigms, but that's not the right way to pronounce it. Paradigms are methods or ways we look at how we look at things, right? Patterns in terms of how we look at certain types of activities around us or different concepts in order to be able to make sense of what's happening around us. So the question that was asked here is, what is your current leadership paradigm? What do you all think leadership is? So we want to start from anybody. Miss John, for example. When you think of leadership, what do you think of? Without thinking about it, when I say leadership, what comes to mind? Braffett. Hello.
Self-made responsibility.
Okay, good. Anybody else?
Yes, sir. I
Yes,
would say
Braffett.
someone who could lead a team to effectively complete the job.
All right, that's what that when I say leadership, that's what comes to mind. What image comes to mind
Self-patience.
when? Sorry, patience.
Patience.
Uh huh. Okay, all right. If you say so. All right. Anybody else?
So for
What
me, it's a team.
a team? Okay.
When I hear the word leadership, team comes to mind. Yeah.
All right. Okay. They become synonymous for you. All right. All right. Me, I see your mic open. Something else you want to add?
Good work ethic.
Good work ethic. Wow. All right. I want you all to remember
So,
these things. Huh? Yes. Go
when
ahead,
when I
Brandon.
when I think of leadership, I think of someone who I don't want to say the word that leads people, but like somebody who has followers and is someone that you look up to
Mm.
kind of guide you in a particular way. That's how I kind of see it.
All right. Good. So that's your current paradigm. Okay. Cool. So now, because of the paradigm that you may have, what happens is if for some reason the current paradigms are not working, then it signals that we need a paradigm shift. All right, and a paradigm shift means that when we have to move away from something that we held as being true to something new that has to deal with the issues that we have at hand currently. So, what are some examples of paradigm shifts that we could think of? So, the one paradigm shift that we want to focus on here in the leadership thing is first and foremost that leadership is not something that a leader possesses as much as a process that involves fellowship. Now, can you think of any other paradigm shifting that might need to be, besides in leadership, what are the paradigm shifting should we be looking at in our societies?
Basically how we dealt with COVID.
Possibly, but
So like,
we can't go back and change that, but we can only change it moving forward.
yeah.
Yeah, right. What else? Anything else? All right. So Zahir, you brought up that COVID issue. What did you see as being a better way for us to treat it with that in going back from the past?
A better way. Yeah. Not really sure, sir, because like all the things we was given at the time is in conflict of what we know now.
Hmm.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
see,
So
so if we think about it, why we did what we did was based upon the information we had available at that time. So, can we really say that it was wrong or was just being safe rather than sorry? You know, so this is one of the reasons why I wouldn't go second guessing what went through. We just have to try and treat with what impact is left over now that we've done it. Right? You already spilled the milk, you might as well wipe it up. Don't analyze, how the milk fall down. All right. Okay, so let me look at this paradigm that we talk about here. This is an important shift in the thinking process because when we talk about leadership, all of you all spoke about the leader, with the exception of groups, the person who identified groups. When we talk about leadership, a paradigm shift in our thinking here now is to not think of the leader, but to think of the person's following. And what is followership? Followership is really leadership and action among a group of people because people can't do things as a leader without followers. Let's remember that. You can't do certain things if you don't have followers. Now, as a leader, one of the things you can do is to evaluate and be aware of the types of followers that you're likely to have around. You have This is taken from the text itself. It talks about the four different types of followers. You have partners, contributors, subordinates, and politicians. So you'd notice that on the y-axis and the x-axis, they're measuring two things: the relationship initiative and the performance initiative. So where you have high relationship and high performance, you have a partner. But where you have low relationship and low performance, you have a subordinate. That's somebody who you have to force them and kind of mentor them all the way through everything to do anything. Contributors, they are really good in performance but poor in relationships. And politicians are really good with relationships but poor with doing things. So we know these kind of people. But the idea is, if you know where they fall, what can you do with them, and how do you work with people who fall into these categories? Now, think about this from the concept of group work. In a group, you might find yourself with a combination of these types of individuals. So one of the techniques you can use is to be able to make your life as a group leader easier is to put a subordinate together with a partner, somebody who has high relational and high performance skills, and a contributor and a politician together. Why? Because the politician is good at the relational, and let's say the politician is good at presenting, but the contributor is not good at presenting, but they're good at getting all the information together. You follow me? The subordinate, on the other hand, needs to be given things to do and be instructed all the way through. That's why you need a partner to work with them. And of course, the leader now is pulling these people together to be able to achieve their goals and functions. Making sense? Think about who are you generally in that group of individuals or classifications when you were in a group? Politician, partner, contributor, subordinate. Huh? Not an easy question to answer. All right, well, let's look at some other types of followers. This is more from a political standpoint. 7 types. You have loyalists, sycophants, critics, opportunists, spectators, traitors, and realists. Again, this is just a technique utilized to be able to evaluate different types of followers you might have, especially in a political organization. And once you know, you could categorize them, and they may be clearly definable, but they can also be subsets of each other. Um, you then need how to work with them, and once you can work with them, you can actually be able to hone in on these individuals and get them to do the things that you need to get done. So, or to manage those individuals across the board. So that's important. There's another set of divisions here. We'll come across this in another part of the thing. This is the 5 follower types. You have the alienated follower, the effective follower, the conformist, they're just going along, the pragmatic survivor, and the passive follower. So, and the axes that they're measuring is active to passive behavior and independent critical thinking to undependent. So it's sort of like a well, it's a sort of like a graph where you have that element. You have highly independent thinking people here, lower independent measured on this axis here. Passive behavior, active behavior. We would all love to be effective followers, but the fact of the matter is that a lot of critical thinking individuals who don't want to get involved or don't like the individual, they don't have a good relationship with the leader, tend to fall into the area of alienated followers. Active behavior, these are the conformists. They just follow what you say to do, they do. Passive followers, they don't do anything unless they've been actively pushed to do it. So again, this puts you in a situation where you can start to match people together with each other to be able to get work done in an organization. But again, the point of this is to be able to evaluate the people around you in terms of the followers, and as a leader, know how to manage these individuals within the organization that you're operating from. So what are the responsibilities of followers? Offer support to leaders. Well, a lot of leaders like that. Take initiative. That's important because it takes a lot of work off the plate of the leader. Some leaders like it, other leaders don't, and therefore it's kind of difficult because sometimes if you take the initiative and you make a mistake, you can be punished for something like that. Playing counselor and coaching roles, meaning both to the leader and other followers, coaching other people in terms of how to do things and counseling the leader as well, because we don't expect the leader will know everything. So therefore, you're there as a follower to assist with the leader's knowledge and development as well as your own and your colleagues around you. Raise issues and or concerns where necessary. Some leaders don't like this, other leaders welcome it. Seek and encourage honest feedback. Again, some leaders like this, but others don't. Clarify your rules and expectations. So if you're getting involved in an organization, regardless of what position you end up in, leadership or as a follower, you need to clearly identify and be able to determine what your rules and expectations are. Show appreciation both to the leader and other members of the organization. Keep the leader informed. That's important as one of the responsibilities as the followers, and resist inappropriate influences of the leader. This is going to become a critical one as we start to look at some of the practice of leaders in the future and the past. All right, because a lot of leaders behave in really bad ways in the past and sometimes even currently, and nothing happens to from the followers' point of view to pull the leader straight. Either they're afraid to do so or they are discouraged in doing so. All right. Now, in order for them to accomplish those roles, these are the things or the competencies they need to have. Loyalty. They have to function well in change environments. They have to function well on teams. They have to be independent and critical thinkers, and they have to consider integrity of paramount importance. Now, the type of follower that we're discussing here is the ideal type, not the type that leaders might like because they can control them, but these are followers who will question the decisions being made by a leader and challenge him or her on the decisions that they're making, not out of spite, but because they're critically thinking individuals who are clear on what their goals and responsibilities are, both for themselves and their organization. So if those are the kind of qualities we're talking about, is the term follower the best word to use to describe them? What might you suggest that we can call them? There are a couple of names that comes to mind. Anybody? Would you use the phrase associates? Partners?
Colleagues.
Colleagues? Very good. Yeah. So those are some of the, because follower seems a little bit of a, what's the word I want to use? Anybody? Share a word that might, sounds a bit...
Hierarchical.
Correct. Very good. Nice word. Who's that? That's Zaire?
Yes, sir.
Well done, sir. All right. So leaders, these are the styles that leaders can take, and we keep on talking about the type of leadership styles that can be utilized in varying formats. Classical styles, which is laissez-faire, autocratic, and participative. These are the classical approaches to leadership that we have. Then you have situational, which is your leadership is determined by the situation that you're in. Emergent would be leaders who emerge out of an organization over time. Transactional, a technique in which you're using a series of transactions to be able to get things done. You know, we do this with children a lot. You know, if you do this, you'll get this, a piece of candy, and kind of bribing kind of situation. Transformational, that's the type of leadership style in which a leadership style in which you inspire people to want to change, and not only themselves but change the organization. And then of course you have visionary leadership styles, which paints a picture of a future well down the road, but you encourage people to move towards that. So it's a combination of transformational as well as creating an image of a future that we all want to share. Type of utopian approach to think. All right. So the leader defined as any person who's actively engaged with others to accomplish change. Notice we didn't distinguish the nature of the change. All right. Purpose of the leader: motivate employees or motivate members, attain the organization's goals and objectives. As with any leader, if they don't, they will be a failed leader. Ensure that the rules that govern the organization are adhered to. Provide continuity as we move from one individual to another, or even from one leader to another. There's a sense of continuity as well as momentum, meaning that we aren't stagnating, but we are currently moving towards another phase and moving through to another activity and so on. That momentum. Embrace, foster, and change. So, as a leader, you always have to lead from the front. If you want change to take place in the organization, then you yourself have to embrace changes and foster the changes that are required. Act upon the common good, and the common good is for everybody. Behave in a sociable, responsible manner. We spoke about that before, meaning doing things that don't bring the society around us and the people around us, in, not directly in the organization, but just the environment or the place we live in, to be responsible to them. Civic engagement and civic responsibility. We'll get into those things a little bit. So we spoke about social responsibility before. This is a personal commitment by on behalf of the leader to make sure that whatever we do is for the good of everybody in the world around us, the community you live in, and the wider world. Okay, so it's important. That's socially responsible. It means that if your organization is doing things that's inherently negative or dangerous, then you have to manage that social responsibility. So if you think about oil companies and mining firms, and you think about the negative impact that it has on the environment, this is why social responsibility has become so critical. Civic engagement, meaning that you have a heightened sense of responsibility for all of the communities in which you are involved, be it work, your social, your family, communities that you actually live in, and so on. So all of these communities you are engaged in and feel a sense of responsibility for the places that you live in, that you work in, with whom you socialize, and the family that you have and that type of stuff. So civic engagement requires that. So these are some of the things that you do. You participate in activities that help to make your environment better, or the society that you're living in better. How many of y'all ever took part in like beach day cleanups, or um, did a cleanup activity in the community? How many of y'all simply clean the drains in front of your home, or the sides, the front of your home, there on the street? Do you look after that? Cut down the bush in the yard. Make sure you're not collecting water so that you're encouraging mosquitoes. Those kind of things. Those are the sense of things that you do for civic engagement type of thing. You're making sure that your actions don't put the rest of our community at risk, and by extension the rest of the country, and that by that extension by the rest of the world. That's sort of like wearing masks kind of situation. Civic responsibility, the sense of personal responsibility individuals should feel to uphold their obligations as part of any community. So here we have a list of things: going to school, obeying laws, paying taxes, serving as on jury things. Any of you all ever did all this? Most of you, well, you're going to school, so you're here. I guess you pay taxes and you obey the laws. I don't have any of you all ever done jury duty. That's what Ramon had his hand up, Durham. You did
Yeah, so
jury.
well, I actually have a hearing. Yeah, well, I actually have a call for jury duty on the 16th of September.
Okay, wow, that should be interesting. Um, for whatever reason, teachers are exempt from that. Quite interesting. All right, community service, voting, service to. Any of y'all ever participated in sort of paramilitary activities like cadets or Boy Scouts or Girl Guides, that kind of stuff? Participated? No? Yes, Kiana, what did you do, Miss Regis?
I'm a part of the Girl Guides Association.
Right. My sister-in-law is actually part of the Girl Guides Association as well. That's interesting. I was thinking about the brownies as well, the 4-H clubs, the Rotary Club, the Leo clubs, or the Lions, that type of stuff. All of those things are community service organizations that you could get involved with. The military, well, paramilitary type of, will be like the cadets, um, the scouts, the brownies. All of they kind of help with that area. Displaying patriotism, things like flying the flag. That's something that's huge in the States. It's not very big here in Trinidad, but again, um, different ways. You know, when carnival time, everybody jamming. Senior conversation question here. Never did you teach you? Okay, like a cult. Brandon, what do you mean like a cult? Like I need to leave the chat on. Is Brandon still here? Yes, he is. All right. Okay. So, continuing along, we have should a leader know everything?
Nah, it's impossible for a
No,
leader to know.
Yeah,
you can't.
that's it. It's not practical. That's very, very good. Very, very good. So therefore, if we don't expect a leader to know everything, and you know, interestingly enough, there are leaders, very traditional leaders, who will not admit to not knowing anything, knowing everything, and that actually is a form of um, dishonesty that is really thing, and it's such a Trinidadian thing too. We don't like to say we don't
So we
know.
have we have we have a prime minister for an example.
I don't want to call names and point fingers. I'll leave that for you guys to do.
Don't go there.
Come, Kamita, yeah, you want to?
So,
No, so
but
I was going to, sorry, I was going to react and I raised my hand instead.
Oh, okay. All right. Yes, Amani.
I was just saying there is a gentleman in my department who acts like that, like he knows everything. So
Uh,
sometimes when the boss goes on vacation, he sometimes takes over and he always
uh,
act like he knows everything, but he gets a lot of resistance from subordinates, from the other workers,
and that
because
that
of
is
his
true.
approach.
Yeah, and it's because if you pretend that you know everything, and the reality is that you don't, you will, you know, create problems for people, and then they have to clean it up, right? When he makes all that mess. All right. So once a leader recognizes one, he doesn't know everything, it means that the leader needs to be open to learning. And again, what we should remember or recall that all of us are smarter than just the one of us. So again, you can't expect that if you don't know everything, then you have to depend upon others to help fill in the gaps that you have. So the whole group, including the leader, needs to make sure that the environment is open to learning, making mistakes, and sharing knowledge. And therein is two elements that create problems in some working environments. If the environment is not open to learning, it's not a learning environment, then making mistakes is a problem. And sharing knowledge is like giving up your power. And that there are lots of people who don't like that. So this is speaking about the learning model that we need to look at. This is the one that exists in the text. This learning model talks about the need for us to be aware of what we can do is based upon the intersection of our focus, will, and capacity. All right, what we that's what we do. That's what we can actually accomplish, or what we do get done. Focus and will just give us what we want to do. Your capacity and your willingness will only be what you could do. Your focus and your capacity will also what you can do, but we need all three for us to be able to, really get things done. Now, another learning system, this might be something that science students in particular will be familiar with. This is the scientific method of how hypothesis becomes theory, which is you start with conceptualizing, applying that concept, examining the experience and then reflecting upon it, making changes to the original concept, and further inquiry. And once you've done this a few times and we've come up with the truth, or we've come up with testable, repeatable answers or outcomes, that then feeds into existing theory, which is then applied into the real world. So that's a learning model that we tend to utilize. So for some of us, we might be familiar with that. The most effective organizations in the world around us are those that are learning environments, because it means that they value going learning as a natural part of an organization's growth and development. In fact, the term that we tend to utilize is lifelong learners. In the colleges, in COSTAT's mission and vision statement, we speak about this, lifelong learners. In fact, every time we have graduation, lifelong learning is part of the thing that we keep on talking about, because regardless of where you are in life, you continue learning all the time. And that learning helps us to maintain a sense of wonder and a vitality that is important. The organization is renewing itself time and time again by relearning and doing things over and over again. Another form of learning that is critical and has to be respected is experiential learning, which is learning from the concrete experiences of our day-to-day activities. Now, if you think about it, learning through experience starts with thinking about it, then doing it, and then learning more from the action of doing it and reconceptualizing what's going on. We get better by repeating the process over and over again. That process involves reflection on what went before, and that then helps us to make improvements in the future. So the process looks like this. You have you start with conceptualization, you try it, you experiment with it, you observe that concrete experience, you reflect upon it, you come back to that. And that's an ongoing experiential process, which is one of the reasons why experience is one of the best teachers in life, if we really look at it from a circular process of learning and always learning all the time. So a nice quotation from the text that kind of wraps this whole chapter up is that leadership is a role that's open to everybody. Leadership is living by a personal set of rules in which you motivate others to do the right thing, be engaged in the world, and to listen to others and their concerns. Leadership is focused on the other person. Far too often, when people arrive in positions of leadership, their focus is, well, I is the star now. All right? Everybody got to do what I say, as opposed to the idea that I'm in a leadership position. I have the responsibility to look after my fellow employees and my fellow workers. I am here to help them achieve the goals of the organization, and therefore, how can I be of service to my other members to be able to get that? So we'll come across some of those concepts in our further exploration of leadership in the other chapters. So I want to leave you with this image and this quotation here. Leadership is not the privilege of the few. You and I can and should be leaders. All right, guys. Any questions about tonight's presentation that you wanted to get any clarification on? Next week we will be looking at chapter 2 and the following week chapter 3. Any questions? No?
No, sir.
No, not at the moment.
All right. I hope everybody understands. All right. So if I were to run a little quiz, we would be able to understand everything. Yes? Why not?
That's true. Sure, no
But
problem.
you did bring up a point earlier that it is impossible for us to know everything.
We said the leader doesn't know everything. All right, guys. All right. Thanks a lot. Let me stop the recording now. All right. So I'll be